Hello everyone, Skippy here, and welcome to One Piece episode 1071, directed by Tatsuya Nagamine and supervised by Keita Saito and Midori Matsuda. Well, after a year plus of waiting, our funny little guy is finally here as Luffy unleashes Gear 5th for the first time ever, resulting in, on the production side of things, an incredible effort from everyone involved to make a laundry list of banger episodes for the Goofy guy, starting with an episode from one of our three series directors, Tatsuya Nagamine, and partially our character designer, Midori Matsuda, that's poised to be a cinematic yet exciting reveal for this new form that'll forever mark it in One Piece history and then some. With a lot on the table to talk about as is, let's waste no time and get right into things. This episode covers the entirety of chapter 1044, and that makes it so there's no weird stops or breaks in the flow of Luffy getting this new form. Jumping right off of last episode covering 1043's cliffhanger that leads into it, and for the most part everything is largely intact here when it comes to the progression of events and content, while also offering us, of course, an extended look at the Nika powers that we'll discuss more in depth later. And when the goofiness is on display, the episode is absolutely at its strongest, nailing absolutely every facet of the form and debuting some new and fantastic pieces of OST with it that use drums quite predominantly and even go as far as to give a Gear 5 theme remix of the classic One Piece theme Overtaken. And who could forget the absolutely balls to the wall sound design on display that is normally fairly divisive for fans of the series, but here manages to match the Tom and Jerry energy so well to the point that even sound effects more closely associated to something like Mr. Krabs walking from SpongeBob find their way into the episode. It's all just so insanely well done on every front, which makes the times where the episode does falter a bit, sadly, a bit of a nosedive, as we have to cover the Hiyori and Orochi cutaway that the original chapter housed, which snaps the momentum of the episode in half, and there's sadly a bit too many flashbacks to run on for too long and reused cuts from earlier in the episode that definitely do pad for timing at certain points, but it leaves you feeling whelmed in comparison to everything else that is just exciting. I'm not sure if they maybe could have done a bit more with some of the fighting extensions than they ended up doing in order to circumvent some of these issues, or just rearrange the Hiyori and Orochi confrontation to a different episode to slightly help matters, but its strict adherence to the manga's flow makes up the episode's major highs and lows, and so it sadly isn't as cohesively insane as it could have been. However, even in spite of that, I definitely say this is Nagamine's strongest output directorially since the start of this arc 4 years prior. For those who don't know, Nagamine was previously the main series director for the series starting with the Wano arc, and he usually had two other directors supporting him in this role to make the series as polished as it can be. But that important overall else role did keep him from doing his absolute best when it came to the direction of storyboards of the episodes that he was in charge of, oftentimes taking scripts with very little meat to them so he could only focus on one thing, like both of the major Zoro attacks that he handled, and otherwise could take it fairly simply and not put much extra thought into pacing and the like, as he lacked the time needed to really polish it all up. Fast forward to now when Nagamine is the third credited series director, which obviously gives him slightly more time to craft episodes while running the show with Ito and Koyama, and just like we saw on his board for 1060, we're getting the most raw look at Nagamine and his several traits for better or for worse. Quick cuts that add a frantic feeling to the episode, action storyboarding that's only limited by his imagination quite like the character, and ideas and colors mixed together where they're needed in order to make this feel directorially special, all the while keeping the cartoonish charm of Gear 5 intact whenever it's on screen, and sometimes making it look even eerie and scary during its more formative moments. Now sure, I do realize that Nagamine's direction is a bit of a mixed bag for some with how quirky it can be at points, even disregarding the Gear 5 fun that makes up a large part of it, and it of course feels like the main pacing pitfalls of the episode fall largely on his board, because he can't quite fill up time, so he relies on the lengthier few flashbacks to stall for time during otherwise exciting moments. But I feel like there was still a really remarkably strong sense of atmosphere, chaos, and just sheer directorial power all over the place, even in areas like the Hiyori scene that aren't over-directed per se, but still do the job much better than some other episode directors would in a very simple way. It's definitely a bit jank due to the aforementioned pacing and flashback problems, but I'd be hard-pressed to call it anything but a strong showing of his ambition as a director that effortlessly helped in bringing Wano and its several fantastic moments to life in the first place. And he's only further supported by the animation staff on board, who themselves also reach their quite literal peak. From the get-go, when we realized Naotoshi Shida is the appetizer to a big event like this, you can immediately tell that Gear 5 is a form that is unintentionally made for animation, from its Tom and Jerry inspired roots all the way down to its simple design. And so it's no wonder why so many people from all over the world want to animate the form itself and go absolutely bonkers with it. With this episode already housing an absolute array of fantastic animators who are known for participating on the show in the past, whether it be the loose work of Chris Yenby M that plays around with the form in so many loose ways as Kaido gets absolutely clobbered, or the three-dimensional work of Vincent Chansar that adds another layer of life to every crevice of the character design, and helps makes the laughs feel every bit as lifelike as they need to be in such expertly done character acting. The form just never stops moving, not even for a second, which plays to the absolute strengths of it and Luffy as a character, as he just goofs off while kicking Kaido's ass relentlessly for most of the B part, allowing the aforementioned animators and people like Ishitani episode mainstay Jackie Sawaki returning to play around with the guidelines present in Nagamine's board in order to just have fun and come up with their own ideas for the Toonie action, as long as it's all within reason for the manga, of course. However, nowhere is that more apparent than in the work of the absolute star of this episode, Waylon Zhang. Zhang is an animator who some will mostly know from their work on the Boruto and Mob Psycho 100 series, where he has always displayed a loose yet extremely weighty and realistic sense of feeling to his animation that goes beyond with what you think the medium itself can achieve sometimes. And when he gets a hold of Luffy and Kaido here, it is truly a sight to fucking behold. Frantic camera movement, insane draftmanship that manages to stay loose yet defined at the same time, that facilitates some of the most off-the-wall and impressive movement that the series has ever been graced with over its 25-year-long history. Maybe coming off as hard to follow sometimes just due to how zany, loose, and fast it can maybe get, but that's what honestly makes it so special, and why Waylon's stunning debut on the series lends itself to the form of Gear 5 so very well. Luffy in this stage is only limited to his imagination here, and that is just extremely evident in this stellar sequence that is truly one for the history books. And one that would mix together with this generally high tier level of animation throughout the entire thing will make this the iconic episode that it deserves to be. Sure, there are some absolutely glaring issues with parts of the episode, and some may not dig Nagamine as an episode director, which more power to you if you don't, but even in spite of that, you truly can't deny the amount of heart and work that went into making this episode as crazy good as it possibly could have been for the debut of Luffy's peak. And that, most importantly everyone, is what ends up overshadowing the bits that might bring it down a peg. And when next week we're keeping this train chugging along with episode 1072, that looks to be offering even more goofy fun animation from specifically the likes of Chu Young-seo and Soti, to name just a few, then oh boy, we really only have just begun. Anyways guys, that's it for now. I'm Skippy, and oh my god, I could talk about the new ending for a whole video on its own. I love it.